LifeStories Live.
Hello, everyone. It's good you can join us again for another life story coming to you from LifeStories Worldwide. It's live on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. Please tell your friends about this wonderful story that you're going to hear this evening. If you need help, if you need prayer, then contact us on our hotline +44 794 355 0287, or go to our website, LifeStoriesWorldwide.com, where you'll find lots of interesting information which will help you. I'd like to welcome especially all our people who are watching in America. A happy Independence Day. Although I know you can be happy, we shouldn't be happy that you became independent, but never mind. We wish you a happy Independence Day. And welcome to all our other guests who are watching in Ukraine, and I know in Bulgaria tonight. So thank you for joining us. Our story tonight comes from California. We have an angel speaking tonight, Angel Lopez. Angel had an idealistic lifestyle when he was a young man, but when he was 17 years old, he saw his 14-year-old brother getting involved with gangs. And he had a terrible thing happen to him, which Angel is going to show tonight. And it caused Angel to become angry and wanted to get revenge. But something happened to him, and he's going to share his story with you tonight. So I'm going to hand over now to Angel in California. Thank you, Angel.
Thank you for having me. And it's a blessing for me to be able to share my testimony of the power of God over my life and family. Well, my name is Angel Lopez, and I reside in Fall River, California. I'm 30 years old. I got 4 kids and a wife. You know, like you were saying right now, when I was young, I had an ideal life. My parents were hardworking parents, both of them. My dad was always working 7 days a week and try to provide for the family as much as he can by giving us what we needed. My family came from Mexico. They were just people that worked. But at the time, like you were saying, I was 17 years old. I had 6 brothers. Me being the 6th and the oldest of 6 brothers, I always took a responsibility of always taking care of my younger brothers, me being the oldest. I've always been protective over them. So, I don't know if every older brother's like that, but me, I have always took it like if something happened to my little brothers, I would feel it, and I would rather have that what they're going through happen to me instead of them. So, I grew up in Fallbrook, small town, about 38,000 people. Everyone in that town. Like I was telling somebody the other day, it's like you could throw a nail in the middle of the town and everybody's gonna know who threw it, because it's that small. And I grew up there since I was born in San Diego. But when I was born in San Diego, my parents were living in Fallbrook. So I was raised in Fallbrook, not born there, but I was raised in Fallbrook since I was two days old. So, and all my brothers were born in Fallbrook. I was the only one that was born in San Diego. So at the time, I grew up, had everything that a kid could possibly have, but the thing is that, didn't have Jesus at the time. None of my family knew Jesus. None of my family went to church. None of my family worship or ever attended church. But tragedy hit in our family when in 2010, when I was 17 years old. One of my little brothers that was a year younger than me at the time was involved in gangs. He liked the gang life. He liked the rebellious life, not listening to my parents, So he decided to live a gang life. My brother that was at the time, he was 16, I was 17. All he knew was being in the gang, since he was 11 years old. My parents at the time, like they were trying to find a way to get him out of that lifestyle. And like I was saying, my parents didn't know about God, didn't know that there was, you know, things that needed to be broken, and the only things that could break those things was Jesus. But we didn't know. So at the time, my little brother that was 3 years younger than him, at the time he was 13 years old. And I remember my little brother trying to be like him, because in this world, we live in a world that sometimes nobody wants to be the good guy, everybody wants to follow the villain, the bad guy, maybe because the popularity they get supposedly of women, money, fame in the streets. So my little brother wanted to follow his footsteps. He didn't want to follow my footsteps because he thought my footsteps were boring because I was a soccer player. I used to love soccer. I was really good at it, and I was looking forward to being a professional soccer player at the time. And I remember that, my little brother trying to dress like my other brother. He's trying to wear the same clothes like my brother. Over here in California, when you're in the gang life, there's a certain way to dress. There's a certain way to walk and act when you want to join a gang. And I remember my little brother at the time seeing my brother's clothes, because my brother was incarcerated at the time, because all his life since he was 11, he's always been in jail, juvenile hall, prison. But at the time he was in juvenile hall, and I remember my little brother was seeing the Dickies, seeing the Converse, seeing the gang-related clothes, wanting to wear those, wanting to put those shoes in his feet. And I remember him dressing like him. And at the moment we didn't realize it, but he wanted to be like my brother. And I remember him starting to hang out with the wrong crowd because my brother was well respected here in Fallbrook. He was well known for his rebellious life that he was living. He was feared. And so my brother wanted that. My brother wanted that supposed respect.
Life Stories.
And he started joining with the friends that my brother would hang out, and they accepted him and they received him as one of theirs. And I remember seeing him walking at night one day, trying to hang out with the wrong crowd. And I'm playing soccer and I'm coming for practice, and I'm letting him know, like, where are you going? And I remember him saying, I'm gonna go hang out with the fellas because I'm part of this now. And I remember telling him, you don't want that life. Don't you see our other brother is wasting his life? Where is he at now? He's in jail. And where are all those friends that supposedly they have your back? None of them are there. But he was young at the time. He was 13 years old. And I remember, he wanted to be like my other brother. And at the moment, my parents, they were focused on work. They were focused on giving us a better life. And like I said, like they didn't know anything about God. They didn't know they heard about a God, but they didn't know God. And I remember one day I remember it was on 2010 on April. I remember it was a Wednesday night. And I remember that um, some gang members came right here at the city of Fallbrook, the rival gang members. And I remember they were doing things like shooting, getting the rival enemies. And I remember my brother going to supposedly the neighborhood and letting me know that they were gonna go retaliate. So I see them and I'm like, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "We're gonna go retaliate." But I don't know what hit me at the time because I was no gang member. I never got in trouble in my life. I was graduating high school and I was gonna go to college and everything. But I remember that I don't know what hit me. It was probably that instinct of protecting my little brother of, something bad's gonna happen to him. So I gotta go and protect him. But I didn't think that something this horrible was gonna happen in our lives. And I remember going with him and telling him, "I'm gonna go with you." But in my mind and my heart was like, I'm just gonna go show him that the lifestyle that he's trying to chase, it's a lifestyle that he's not gonna want. So I went over there and I remember getting into the car, not thinking something like this horrible was gonna happen in my life. And we go to the car and I go with them. It never went through my head that it was gonna happen. And I go with him in the car. And I remember I went with them where they were gonna go and they get off the car and these rival gang members were right there. So we get off the car thinking that, we were gonna scare these guys. But at the end, they were just setting us up. They wanted us to come out of the car and across the street on the house, they started shooting. So when they started shooting, I remember my brother yelling because he got shot in his leg with a sawed-off shotgun. And I remember at the time him yelling, and the only instinct as an older brother is like, I gotta grab my brother and protect him. So I grabbed my brother and I threw him inside the car back. And I remember they just shot the car like at least 100 times. Windows broken, the car was totally, impacted by the gunshots, the gun bullets. And I remember telling the driver, "Let's go." And my brother's bleeding from the face, from the nose, from the cheek, and from the neck. I'm thinking it's the glass, because the car got impacted by the bullets. So I just see my brother in a lot of pain, like trying to pass out. But I'm thinking it's the gunshot wound from his leg, so maybe he's in a lot of pain and because of the pain, he's going to pass out. So that's what I thought. So I was about to let him, go to sleep so he won't feel the pain. But something hit me to wake him up. So I started waking him up. And I remember the gang members taking me to the hospital and just leaving me there. So I'm right there with my little brother, take him to the ER and I sat him at the bed and the paramedics told me what happened to him. And I'm like, oh, he got impacted by some gunshot wounds on his leg. So at the time, that's what I thought, his leg. But it ended up being that he got hit with a gunshot wound in his head, his nose, his cheek, and his neck. So he was 13 years at the time. And I remember they're air flying him to San Diego to Children's Hospital, and he's fighting for his life, and tragedy hit our family during that time. And I remember my mother coming and saying, my mother was 5 months pregnant at the time. She's like, if something bad happens to my son, it's going to be your fault, because at the moment, pain was she was feeling pain and anger, but she didn't know how to respond. So she responded in the way she could, saying that if something bad happens to her son, it's my fault. So I'm right there, just like, wow, like this happened to me. Like, how can this happen to me? How can something like this ever in my life? Like I never thought something like this could happen in my life. And I remember my mother going with my dad to the hospital, and 48 hours are critical. They couldn't do anything. He's fighting for his life. And 48 hours passed, and I remember my mother 5 months pregnant with her tummy right there, suffering. And I remember my dad, when you don't have Christ, you don't know how to respond, especially with moments that are tough. You don't know where to to respond. And I remember my mother crying, and I remember my mother, you know, trying to seek God, but she didn't know how to seek Him. She didn't know where to go and pray. She just did what she knew. What traditions she was carrying out since she was over there in Mexico. Praying to saints, praying to angels. And I remember that my brother's fighting for his life, and my brother dies in Mother's Day. So it was hard for my mother. She's pregnant. She's devastated. Her son dies on Mother's Day, and I remember, they're about to turn him off from the machine, and I remember me, like never got in trouble in my life, never stepped foot in jail in my life, never had any encounters with law enforcement in my life. But that day, my life changed. I saw blood, I saw death, and I swore that I was gonna make every mother cry.
Life Stories.
I swore that I was gonna make everybody pay that was responsible, and never got in trouble in my life. And after that, my brother dies on Mother's Day. I remember, I have a lot of hate. I have a lot of, you know, vengeance. I just want to get the responsible people. And I remember my mom and dad at the time having a lot of hate too towards gang members. They wanted everybody dead also. And my brother at the time, he was in jail, the 16-year-old one, the one that was a year younger than me. So he's able to get out before they bury him and let him go. And I remember my journey before coming to Christ. It was tough because there was a lot of remorse, even my brother towards me, my 16-year-old blaming me that why would I take him to a place to get killed, but not knowing that my little brother wanted to be like him. But I knew as an older brother that I didn't want to hurt my younger brother because it was a load and a weight that he could not carry. Because I knew that if he knew that my little brother wanted to be like him, he was gonna take guilt of my brother's murder. So I kept it inside of me. I didn't tell him anything. He was angry. He was telling me, it's your fault because you took him there, and how can you take him over there? So I took on this guilt and this weight on my life, and all I wanted to do was, get revenge, get vengeance. So I joined the gang. I joined the rival gang. I remember that I wanted to be a gang member, not because I liked the lifestyle, but because it was a way of showing vengeance to the people that were responsible. So I ended up meeting my wife at the time, and during this time, which she was my girlfriend at the time, I ended up meeting her. Um, we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and I remember that I only lasted 4 months out in the streets. Never stepped foot in jail. Never had a criminal record in my life. At the time, he died on Mother's Day. Then I graduated from high school. Then I joined the gang after I graduated from high school. 4 months is all I lasted in the street and being a gang member, and I went straight to prison. They got us for something that honestly we didn't do, but God had a purpose. regardless of what was going on at the time that I didn't understand, losing a brother, then going to prison, not having a criminal background, but they hit us hard. The law hit us hard. At the time, me and my brother were fighting 28 years. And I remember that, I'm in jail, I'm fighting these years. I remember that my wife, which was my girlfriend at the time, she's a month pregnant from me. So, I'm angry. I'm mad, like I don't I don't want to know nothing about God. I feel like there's no God, because if there was a God, he wouldn't allow all these things to happen. And at the time, my mom was suffering. My mom had my little brother. He had my little brother that she was pregnant with, and she wasn't able to take care of my brother. She was suffering. She was depressed. She was, years being in the bed, not being able to get out of the bed, shower, because she was devastated. She was broken. But while I was in prison and my other brother was in prison, we still carried a lifestyle of hate, of vengeance. I remember some lady at the time named, Jolanda. She came and heard about everything that was going on in our lives. She was the first person to share the gospel to our family. And I remember this lady going to my mom's house, even though my mom didn't want to see no one. My mom didn't even want to hear about God, because she felt like, how can a God take away the most precious thing in her life? And I remember this lady would tell her, sow that seed and talk to her about Jesus. And I remember one day being in a cell and receiving a letter from this lady in 2011. I remember I received this letter, and this letter, it was this lady saying she didn't know me, and she doesn't know what I'm going through, but what she does know is that God has a purpose for my life. And I grabbed that letter. At the time, I was angry. I hated everything that had to do with God. And I threw that letter and I started saying, what God, what purpose? If there's a purpose for me, how can a God take my brother? How can my God make my mom suffer? How can a God have me here, my other brother here? So I was angry. I said, I have no purpose. This is my purpose, just being here. And I remember 3 years passed, and I get out of prison, and I remember getting out of prison to almost a 3-year-old daughter that I didn't know, and I get out of prison, and I come and I see my daughter for the first time. She doesn't know me, and she's crying and everything. And I see my mom for the first time after almost 3 years, barely getting out of bed. I couldn't recognize my mom because she looked devastated. She looked like all this weight was upon her, and she was like broken. And I see my mom for almost 3 years, and I said, Mom, is that you? Like, I couldn't recognize her. And I remember this lady, hugging me. And I remember my mom, I couldn't recognize her, all the weight upon her, trying to take her life away, because I had younger brothers. And my little brother's suffering because my mom wasn't there to take care of them, because all she could deal with was her pain. All she could deal was not getting over the loss of her son. And I remember when I come out of prison, my mom starts going to church, and I see this lady, giving her life to Christ. And I see this lady from being broken to a light shining upon her life. And I get emotional right now because I'm just remembering how faithful God is. Sometimes I don't realize it, or I forget how great God is. This was just since 2010. I remember my mom was broken. My whole family was broken. And God is so good. I remember my mom, she going to church, and she starts going to church. My dad at the time had like 7 years without drinking. And I remember I start drinking with my dad. My mom starts going to church, and things are getting worse again for some reason. And I remember I started drinking with my dad. My dad starts getting, drunk. He starts becoming an alcoholic again. And I remember my mom going to church